Fort Adwell, Georgia. 06:47 hours. The laughter came first, low, sharp, meant to wound. Then came silence, the kind that clings to skin. 3 lieutenants hovered near the boot rack, fresh haircuts, clean bars, too young to know better, too cocky to care. Their amusement echoed under the depot's tin roof like ricochets. She stood 20 feet away, alone. No one asked for her name, but they stared at the jacket. Its threads were sun-bleached to memory. The patch on the left shoulder had no definition anymore, just ghost stitches, fabric shadows that might once have meant something to someone. Her collar was high, hiding the scar, her spine straight. The way she stood, too still, too silent, only made her more visible. "Nice Halloween costume," one of them muttered. The depot buzzed with Monday urgency. Forklifts beeped, radios crackled, soldiers shuffled through aisles of folded camo netting and steel shelves. The air reeked of cardboard, diesel, and that cheap, bitter coffee the chow hall swore was fresh. But around her, space seemed to open. A woman in a jacket too worn to matter, boots scuffed to the bone, a clipboard in one hand, a hydration pack in the other. She was not here to make a statement. Just get the gear, sign the form. "Walk out." The young private at the counter blinked at her papers, clearly unsure how to process a requisition signed by someone outside the current command chain. "You need active duty clearance," he said, voice cracking. "I have civilian authorization." Her tone was even. No edge, no plea. She handed over a folded letter, 3 pages, triple stamped. His fingers trembled as he turned the paper, checking the seals. His eyes darted to the screen. I think I need a supervisor." Behind her, the lieutenants moved in. One of them, Myers, took the letter without asking. Held it up like it might catch fire. "Seen better fakes," he said, loud enough for the aisle to hear. "Good printer, though." A pause. Then the second one, Hensley, added, "I bet she tells war stories at the VFW. You know the type. Secret ops, missing medals, missions that never happened." Torres, the smallest but loudest, chimed in with a laugh. "Probably found that jacket in a pawn shop." The private glanced up, eyes full of apology he did not voice. She said nothing. Instead, she stepped aside and sat on the metal bench along the back wall. A corner where supply forms got filled and dignity went to die. The aluminum groaned under her weight. She placed the clipboard on her lap. Waited. The depot returned to rhythm, but not quite. The laughter continued. Not loud, but sustained. A different tone now, bolder, testing the boundaries of who would stop it. That was when someone set down a tray of coffee. 5 ceramic mugs. No words. No introduction. The man was tall, lean, and quiet in the way only combat veterans learn to be. His uniform was regulation, no more, no less. Sleeves rolled to reveal old ink. A Pathfinder arrowhead on one arm, airborne wings on the other. His boots bore the red clay of a place far from Georgia. His name tape read, Brigadier General. He said nothing. Just took one mug. Picked up a second, turned, walked. Toward her. The depot for a moment exhaled. Every eye followed him as he crossed the room. She did not look up, but her spine straightened, subtly. Not pride. Not fear. Something older. The kind of posture drilled into muscle memory from years of standing when no one clapped. When no one noticed. He stopped just behind her. His voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. "That patch on your shoulder?" A silence fell that did not come from hesitation, but recognition. She still did not turn. Her gaze stayed forward, but her words were clear. 519th echo response. Another silence. Longer. Behind them, a fork dropped. A screen beeped. The coffee machine hissed like it had overheard a secret. General Ree stepped beside her now, facing the insignia that no longer existed. His eyes narrowed. Black Dune. Started there, she said. Finished on Crimson Ridge. His jaw set. A name like that was not forgotten, not by men who had lived through it. Jesus, someone whispered near the vending machine. Ree did not turn, did not flinch. He simply placed the coffee cup into her hand and said, "Wait here." Then he turned, walked toward the counter, toward the chain of command. Behind him, the lieutenant stood motionless. The depot had gone still. And Lena Trujillo sat exactly where she had been before. But everything had changed. Fort Adwell, Georgia. 0703 hours. Sergeant Major Edwin Croft moved like a boulder rolling downhill. The door to the back office had barely creaked before he was already halfway across the depot, boots striking the concrete in a cadence older than the lieutenant's combined years of service. Barrel-chested, salt and pepper hair trimmed tight, and a scowl carved by 3 decades of chewing through excuses, Croft did not speak until he reached the front. "Sir?" he asked. Brigadier General Ree did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "This requisition will be filled." No questions, no delay. The sergeant major's gaze followed Ree's line of sight toward the woman on the bench. She was still seated, hands folded neatly on the clipboard, the 5th cup of coffee cooling on the floor beside her boots. Croft's eyes dropped to the faded patch. He blinked once, then again. He did not speak, just gave a crisp nod. "Understood, sir." Ree turned back to the counter where Private Collins looked ready to combust. "Override the system," the general said flatly. Yes, sir." Collins's fingers tripped over the keyboard. The form that had previously locked him out now yielded to a string of officer-level command codes he would never forget. The gear list scrolled green. Approved. "Everything she requested," Ree added. "Plus a spare rig, size 8. "Yes, sir." Ree turned, ready to walk back, but Lena was already on her feet. The depot's buzz had resumed, but wrong, like a machine trying to reboot with the wrong power supply. Conversations became whispers. Orders came slower. Even the forklift in the back idled instead of loading. She approached the counter without looking at anyone else. The hydration pack was sealed, the boots were brand new, laces tucked military style under the tongues. The gloves were regulation, the duct tape, mil-spec. Every item stacked neatly with a printout of her order, now stamped fulfilled. "Thank you," she said simply. Ree inclined his head. "You are owed more than gear," he replied. She did not answer, just picked up the boots. From the edge of the room, Lieutenant Myers cleared his throat. It was a quiet sound, hesitant, misplaced. Lena paused. He stepped forward, not too close. Just enough that everyone saw. "Ma'am," he began, but the words stuck halfway out. "I want to apologize." Lena turned fully now. She looked at him, not with disdain, not with pity, with something far heavier, understanding. "You did not ask," she said. That was all. It hit harder than any reprimand could. Myers looked down. "No, ma'am." She nodded once, then stepped away. Boots under one arm, bag over her shoulder. Behind her, Hensley and Torres tried not to move. Patterson, the warrant officer, said nothing at all. His face was unreadable. Croft stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said with the gravity of one enlisted to another, "you ever need anything again, gear, clearance, a damn forklift, you come through me." She gave him a tired half smile. I hope I never need the forklift." He chuckled, but there was reverence in it. The moment stretched until it was broken by the sound of the front door hissing open. Ree followed her out. They walked side by side down the depot's concrete steps. The Georgia heat hit them like a curtain. Humidity clung to the skin like regret. A pair of soldiers ran past toward formation, glancing sideways as they recognized the general but said nothing. They reached the Ford Ranger. Dust clung to its paint like old stories. The tailgate creaked open with a protest. She tossed the gear into the bed with practiced hands. "I meant what I said," Ree said, voice softer now. She paused, looked at him over the tailgate. "We've got joint training next month, close-range movement, interference drills." "We need someone who's been through the real thing. You'd be mission lead." Lena considered this. The last time someone offered her a role like that, it came with secrecy agreements and a ghost unit that stopped existing on paper the day it saved lives. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded. "That's all I ask." A long pause. Then, without changing his tone, "They will talk." "They already are," she replied. "Let them. You did not ask for anything." "That carries more weight than 100 speeches." Lena closed the tailgate, looked across the parking lot where the depot's glass doors reflected morning sun. "Do you remember the southern exit at Crimson Ridge?" she asked. Ree's face darkened. "I remember a dead channel, and the sound of our medics screaming for air support. I was the voice on the southern feed," she said. 2 clicks out, no eyes, just listening. A silence fell between them again. Not awkward. Not painful, just heavy. "I never knew," he said. "You were not supposed to." And that was the truth of her entire career. He offered a final nod. No handshake. No salute. Just the look of a man who had seen ghosts walk and now stood among the living. She got in the truck. Engine grumbled to life. He stepped back, one hand raised in farewell, not command. She pulled away, tires rolling slow over gravel. In the side mirror, the depot shrank behind her, but already it had changed. Fort Adwell, Georgia. 08:18 hours. The first whispers spread faster than morning PT. By the time formation ended and soldiers filed toward the mess, the depot incident had already acquired its own mythology. The woman in the sun-faded jacket. The patch no one could name. The general who broke protocol with 5 words and a tray of coffee. "She used to run interference ops," someone muttered near the chow hall. "I heard she pulled a general's convoy out of a kill box in Kandahar," another replied. "Echo response," someone whispered. "Triple black." Most soldiers had never even heard the term, and those who had, they denied it out loud, but in private, they looked up from their screens, searched for old deployment rosters, found redacted lines, blank entries, names followed by silence. Silence always meant one of 2 things: lies or ghosts. At the center of it all stood Lieutenant Myers, shoulders stiffer, voice quieter. He had taken his usual place in the officers' lounge, a corner booth near the windows, coffee untouched. Hensley and Torres sat beside him, eyes still red from the slow unraveling of certainty. "This is going to follow us," Torres said, trying too hard to sound casual. "No," Myers replied. "It's going to define us." They sat in silence for a while. Across the room, Chief Warrant Officer Patterson entered, not rushed, not slow. Just deliberate. His coffee sloshed as he set it down at their table without invitation. "You boys ever wonder why officers get quiet around certain names?" he asked. Torres stiffened. "We didn't mean—" "Stop!" Patterson raised a hand. Not angry. Just done. "I served with a guy who did signals out of Bagram," he continued. "Said there was a comms unit that worked from dead channels. That if a call ever came from them, you didn't ask for return frequencies, you just moved, or people died. He took a slow sip of coffee. 519 Echo didn't exist. That was the point. If it showed up, it meant someone up the food chain had failed and needed fixing. Hensley's throat bobbed. But how can a unit not exist? Patterson leaned in, voice low. Because some victories are too ugly to frame. They said nothing. Eventually, the warrant officer stood. Left them alone. The lounge air felt heavier now. Outside, near the motor pool, Sergeant Major Croft was lighting a cigarette he had sworn to quit 3 years ago. Next to him stood Captain Emery, logistics officer and OIC of the depot. "You're telling me she ran Crimson Ridge?" Emery asked, disbelief softening into something less sure. "I'm telling you, General Rhee said her name like it was carved into stone," Croft replied. Emery exhaled through his nose. "You think she's coming back?" "She doesn't strike me as the type who returns," Croft said. "But maybe that's why she should." They smoked in silence. Above them, the Georgia sun cut through pines like judgment. Elsewhere, in a windowless skiff buried 2 levels below the command building, a senior analyst stared at a blinking screen. Her badge read DOD Intelligence Liaison. Clearance, top secret. Below her fingers, a list of names scrolled past, most blacked out. Some flickered with embedded alerts. Lena Trujillo's name was not redacted, but it was flagged. Her affiliation, civilian, retired SFC, last known assignment, Echo Response Group, classified disbanded, status, inactive. The system asked, request file access. 1. The analyst hovered her finger over the key, then hesitated. Instead, she opened a message draft. 2. Regional Command South. Subject, reappearance of former operative message. Confirmed presence of Trujillo, Lena, former 519th Echo, active on Fort Adwell as civilian volunteer. Interaction with Brig Gen Rhee documented. Recommend. Discreet observation. No interference. Risk level, unknown. Potential impact, institutional. She hit send. Then sat back. Some shadows did not stay buried. Across town, Lena sat in the corner of a diner that time forgot. Vinyl booths, a flickering neon sign in the window. The waitress knew her by name, but not by past. A black coffee, 2 eggs, dry toast. Unspoken ritual. The gear bag rested against the wall beside her. She hadn't unpacked it yet. Didn't know if she would. She watched a family outside, a young soldier kissing his wife goodbye before stepping into a base shuttle. His backpack hung low, his shoulders higher. She remembered what that felt like. The weight. The belief. The burn of needing to prove something. She stirred her coffee without drinking it. The door chimed behind her. She did not look. Not until the boots stopped beside her table. Rhee. He slid into the opposite seat, said nothing for a moment. The waitress returned, recognizing him but knowing better than to interrupt. She poured coffee into his cup and vanished again. "You looked like someone who wasn't finished," he said at last. "I never wanted to start again." "I know." She looked at him, tired. "Why now?" "Because we are losing the thread," Rhee said. "The kind that holds the uniform together." "You think I can fix that with a hydration pack?" "I think you can remind them what earned looks like." Lena said nothing for a long time. Outside, a truck backfired. The sound made both of them flinch. His jaw tightened reflexively. Her fingers clenched the mug. They had not left it behind, only learned to hold it quieter. Finally, she spoke. "If I come back..." He waited. No ceremony. No salutes. "No bullshit. You'll just train." "I'll just lead." Rhee nodded once. "That is what I hoped you'd say." She rose, left a $10 bill under the untouched eggs. Gear in hand, war behind her, duty ahead. Fort Adwell, Georgia. 05:42 hours, 2 days later. The sun had not yet risen, but the parade ground was already awake. Floodlights buzzed against the last of the night fog, casting pale cones over gravel and dew-slick grass. Soldiers jogged past in formation, breath steaming from their mouths, cadence sharp and practiced. Somewhere near the motor pool, someone cursed about lost keys and diesel fumes. Lena Trujillo stepped out of the range control office with a clipboard and a map. The badge clipped to her chest read, Civilian Contractor, Training Consultant, Temporary. No rank. No ribbons. Just her name. She wore a simple green tactical shell and a ball cap pulled low. But that jacket, faded, restitched, washed too many times under too many suns, was back on her shoulders. So was the quiet. And this time people noticed. A specialist standing outside the armory gave her a double take, then nodded, not a greeting. Something closer to respect, recognition maybe, or caution. Inside the operations trailer, Captain Emery watched her cross the lot through a dusty window. "Tell me again," he said to no one in particular, "why this woman is running the exercise." The lieutenant beside him, one of the few who had not yet embarrassed himself, shuffled nervously. "Sir, General Rhee requested it directly." Emery grunted. "Rhee also requested we double the perimeter security for this." The lieutenant hesitated. "Because of press attention?" "No," Emery said flatly. "Because people ask questions when ghosts reappear." He watched as Lena passed the bleachers and turned toward the mock urban compound that had been assembled for the day's exercise. Plywood walls, stacked shipping containers, a few fake doors to simulate urban combat. She moved like she was measuring every inch, as if she had done this before, because she had. At 0700 hours, the assembled unit stood in the gravel lot, blinking in early sunlight. 2 platoons of mixed-rank soldiers, gear checked, rifles slung, water packs clipped tight. Their boots shifted anxiously in place. Lena faced them from the center. No podium, no raised voice. Just presence. "I will be your op lead for the interference exercise," she said. "My job is to stop you. Your job is to adapt." She let that hang. This is not about speed. It is about movement under pressure. It is about watching how your line holds when communications fail, when command is blind, and when your flank disappears. Someone in the back, probably a junior specialist, muttered under his breath. Not quite a laugh, just doubt, dressed in immaturity. Lena heard it. She turned, eyes scanning, found him without effort. "Name?" The soldier straightened. "Davis, specialist." She walked toward him slowly, not aggressive, just deliberate. When she stopped, they stood eye to eye. "What is the signal for fallback during radio blackout?" she asked. Davis hesitated, then mumbled, raised fist, left shoulder. "Good." "Now show me." He did, sloppy, too fast. No clearance. She stepped into his blind side before he could reset. "Dead," she said flatly. A silence followed. She turned back to the formation. "I am not here to embarrass you." "But I am not here to babysit either." "Then, you get one chance to fail today. Use it wisely." No one laughed again. By 0830, the exercise had begun. Smoke canisters hissed into the compound from 2 angles. Squads moved through makeshift alleys in staggered formation, one fire team clearing, the other overwatching. Radio calls pinged in short bursts, too clean, too confident. Lena stood on the second level of a container stack, arms crossed, watching. She had built this scenario with only one goal: controlled disorientation. Interference drills were about what happened when doctrine collapsed. When terrain was unfamiliar, Lines of command broke and adrenaline became your compass. The first squad breached too early. The second moved too far up the center. At the third checkpoint, she triggered the first silent disable, an infrared tripwire that lit their comms dark. The reaction was textbook failure. Hands flew, shouting, confusion. She watched as one fire team stopped mid-alley, looking for signals that never came. Another huddled behind a steel drum, radios clicking uselessly. She spoke into her own mic, directed to the observers. Mark Alpha Team red. Charlie Team stalled. No fallback initiated. Below her, soldiers scrambled for direction. A simulated IED went off near the courtyard. Someone cursed. Another dropped prone too late. She closed her eyes. And she was back. Mosul, 2008. Flames behind her. Smoke crawling up the walls. Gunfire echoing in narrow streets where children once played. A medic yelling. A lieutenant screaming for a drone feed that never arrived. And her, crawling through a stairwell with a broken comms pack and a throat full of dust, trying to drag a corporal out from under fallen rebar. She opened her eyes again. The field was still there. This time she did not carry anyone. By 1,000, the exercise was over. Captain Emery stood beside her as the squads regrouped. They think it was unfair, he said dryly. Good, she replied. War is rarely fair. He gave her a sidelong glance. You going to debrief them? I will wait. For what? She looked at the courtyard where sweat-soaked soldiers sat catching their breath, some shaking their heads, others silent. And then, one stood. Davis. The same young soldier from earlier. He crossed the courtyard without invitation, stopped in front of her. Removed his helmet. I screwed up, he said. Did not read the terrain. Didn't listen. She studied him. You adjusted, she said. Next time, faster. He nodded. Then, as if remembering himself, saluted, not sharply, but sincerely. Lena did not return it, just gave a small nod. That was enough. Later that afternoon, General Rhee stood in his office watching drone footage of the exercise. Lena appeared only once, at the edge of the frame, unmoving, like a sentry. She doesn't lead with noise, he said aloud. Across from him, an officer from command tapped a pen against a folder. We need to talk about reintegration, he said. Her name's starting to surface again. Higher-ups are uneasy. She's done nothing wrong. She was part of a unit we denied existed. That creates complexity. Returned. No, that creates obligation. The man hesitated. Do you want her on record again? Rhee's answer was immediate. I want her respected. Fort Adwell, Command Building. 16-12 hours. The air inside Conference Room Delta was colder than necessary. Its walls were painted federal gray, the kind of color that made everything inside feel optional, even people. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and a projector hummed idly, casting ghostly outlines of slides that had not yet been shown. Brigadier General Malcolm Rhee sat at the far end of the polished table. Shoulders square. Uniform crisp. Beside him sat a civilian in a Navy suit, DIA liaison by the look of the briefcase and the bland tie. Across from them, Colonel Stephen Larimore, post commander at Fort Adwell, flanked by 2 legal advisors from JAG. Larimore cleared his throat. She was brought on without formal vetting, he began, tapping a file. She was brought on with my direct authorization, Rhee replied. Which bypassed chain of command. That chain failed her first. The DIA man leaned forward. No one is questioning her capabilities, General. The issue is containment. Rhee's brow lifted. Containment. She is a living artifact from operations that never officially happened. You allowed her onto a base under observation. That exposure has implications. Across the table, Larimore opened the folder. There are photos circulating, he said. One of them shows her patch. Barely visible, but someone enhanced the image. It's being shared on a veterans forum. And it matches a ghost unit, Larimore said. One that does not exist in DoD archives but appears referenced in 3 classified after-action reports. Ree stayed silent. The DIA liaison tapped a pen. This is not about criminality, it's about narrative. If you let her walk around in that jacket, you open questions we cannot answer. If Echo existed, then what else does? The silence turned sharp. Finally, Ree spoke, softly. She earned that silence. You forced it on her. Now you want to punish her for wearing the only proof that it happened? General, Larimore said, choosing his words carefully, we're asking you to consider the strategic cost of sentiment. Ree leaned forward. No, he said. You are asking me to erase a soldier who gave everything except her name. No one responded. Then, Ree rose. This meeting is over. He walked out without waiting for permission. Elsewhere, Lena stood at the base chapel, not for prayer. The doors were unlocked during the day, the pews empty this time of afternoon. The stained glass still filtered Georgia light into colored slivers across the polished floor. She sat in the second row, not in uniform, not quite at peace. She had not meant to come here. Her feet had simply brought her. There were names she had not said in years. Soldiers she had not spoken of since her discharge, voices she still heard in dreams. Some were screams. Others laughter. One had been hers. Crimson Ridge. Black Dune. Deir ez-Zor. Marya. Each a word that meant something different to someone else. To Lena, they were tombstones. The chapel door creaked. Soft steps. She turned. It was Private Collins. He froze halfway down the aisle, clearly regretting every decision that had brought him here. She said nothing. He stepped forward anyway. I wanted to apologize, he said. From the depot. The system blocked your request and I didn't... You followed protocol, Lena said. But I didn't ask. I should have asked. There it was again. That phrase. She looked at him, not with judgment, but something closer to quiet mercy. You're still learning, she said. So ask? Next time. He nodded, then paused. Was it true? He asked. What they said? That you saved a convoy? Lena studied him. A young face. Barely old enough to remember Afghanistan. I did my job, she said. That's enough. He left her with that. She remained seated. The silence returned, but different now, no longer haunted. Just solemn. That evening, her name appeared in a report. Classified. Top-level internal memo. Subject. Trujillo, Lena. Status evaluation. Former SFC Lena Trujillo. Confirmed activity at Fort Adwell under supervision of General Malcolm Ree. Field performance. Exemplary psychological indicators. Stable risk status. Minimal recommendation. Allow continued civilian training support. No further pressuring to disclose prior operations. Maintain internal acknowledgement only. Reintegration optional but not enforced. At the bottom of the memo was one line. She carries history without asking the world to believe it. That makes her dangerous in the right way. Later that night, Lena returned to her apartment just off base. The porch light flickered. Inside, the space was clean, sparse. A few photos on a shelf. One of her and another woman in camo, laughing beside a Humvee. The second woman's face had been partially torn away in the photo. An old corner creased too many times. Lena ran her finger over the edge. The memory hurt, but she kept it anyway. She sat on the edge of her bed, removed her boots, laid the jacket across a nearby chair. She stared at it for a long time. It had once been the only thing between her and a world that forgot she existed. Now it was just cloth, but she had never needed it to be more than that. Outside, the Georgia cicadas began their evening call, long, low, steady. The kind of sound that reminded her she was still here, still moving, still not done. Fort Adwell, Logistics Wing, Archive Room 3B. 13:12 hours, 3 days later. Dust rose from the file as she opened it. It was not hers. It was not supposed to exist. Yet someone had slipped it into the training materials bin, tucked between requisition manuals and blank after-action forms. An envelope marked with an old call sign, E5 Talon, and a return address she recognized. She sat alone beneath flickering overhead lights, surrounded by filing cabinets and decades of buried decisions. The envelope had no date. Inside, 2 pages, typed. Single-spaced, no salutation, no signature. Just words. They told me to forget. Told me it never happened. But I watched you pull a bleeding lieutenant out from under a burning transport with a shattered knee and a busted radio. You didn't wait for orders. You just moved. They made us swear silence. But I've had 3 nightmares a week since 2013. And every time you're there, moving through smoke like it didn't matter if anyone followed. If you're reading this, it means you didn't vanish like the rest of us. It means someone finally saw you again. That matters. Echo was real. And so were we. She stared at the final line. For several minutes, she did not move. Then folded it carefully, slipped it into her jacket pocket. She knew the handwriting on the envelope. Vargas, her fire team lead, dead, last she heard. KIA, Kabul Sector, 2017, or so they said. Elsewhere on base, General Rhee stood with Colonel Larimore in the officers' lounge, the tension between them brittle as dry wood. Did you authorize a dig into Echo's legacy files? Rhee asked. Larimore didn't blink. You mean the ones that technically don't exist? I mean the ones that surfaced on base, unsorted, unsecured, and now in Trujillo's possession. Larimore shrugged. That wasn't me. Then someone's moving pieces we can't see. Rhee looked out the window. Below them, Lena crossed the lot, walking toward the PT field with a quiet intensity that turned heads without trying. I want to know who dropped that letter, he said. Larimore's tone sharpened. You're not suggesting a breach. I'm suggesting someone wants her to remember more than we've permitted. A silence followed. Then Larimore offered what passed for compromise. Keep her close. If the past is surfacing, I'd rather her under your eye than in someone else's crosshairs. Rhee didn't answer. Just watched her silhouette disappear around the corner. 2 hours later, Lena entered the old motor pool workshop, now converted into a makeshift training space. The light flickered. The walls still carried the smell of oil and metal. She set the letter on the table. Waited. And then, the back door opened. A figure stepped in. Gray hoodie. Tactical boots, moving like someone who knew how to disappear in open daylight. She turned. He removed the hood. It was Vargas, 10 years older. 30 pounds thinner, the same scars along his jaw, a limp that hadn't been there before. She did not speak. Neither did he. For a moment, they just stood there, breathing in the same silence they had once survived under. Finally, you were dead, she said. I was supposed to be. Why? They needed someone to blame. I was easier than the truth. She stepped forward slowly. You wrote the letter. He nodded. I've been watching since I heard you surfaced, Ree has eyes, but the ones above him, they're starting to itch. They want Echo to stay myth. They won't get that, she said quietly. They might. If we let them. Another silence. Then Vargas reached into his jacket, placed a flash drive on the table. After Deir ez-Zor, I copied everything. Ops logs, unit manifests, redacted files that were supposed to burn. She looked at it without touching. What do you want from me? I want the story told. That's not justice, that's exposure. No, he said. That's insurance. She considered this. If I run this up the chain, it gets buried. Then don't run it through the chain. He locked eyes with her. Run it through the light. That night she sat in her apartment again. Jacket on the chair, flash drive in her hand, her laptop open. She stared at the screen. A folder opened. Echo Manifest Legacy. Inside, thumbnails appeared. Footage. Images. Body cam clips. A map. A video. A name. Hers. She closed the laptop. Not yet. But the weight in her chest had changed. Not just the burden of memory, the responsibility of truth. Outside, thunder rumbled low. Georgia rain swept the streets. And somewhere inside her, a fuse lit. Fort Adwell, Auditorium 1. 0900 hours, 1 week later. The chairs were filled, but the air was hesitant. Officers in pressed uniforms, NCOs in duty wear, a smattering of contractors, rows of enlisted soldiers with notebooks they didn't plan to use. A quiet ripple moved through the room as General Ree stepped to the podium. No PowerPoint. No military anthem. Just a mic. We hold briefings for all sorts of reasons, he said. Logistics updates. Command shifts. Strategic forecasts. He paused. Today's is different. No one shifted in their seats. I served with people whose names never made it onto rosters, whose unit patches never appeared in public photos, people who answered calls no one acknowledged had rung. He looked toward the edge of the stage. Sergeant First Class Lena Trujillo was one of them. The rustle of attention sharpened. She volunteered for a unit that does not exist. She led missions that are not in the record. And she returned from them with more scars than medals. He stepped aside. And for the first time in over a decade, Lena Trujillo took the stage. She did not wear the old jacket. She wore plain fatigues unadorned, no rank, no insignia. Just presence. She looked across the rows. No paper. No notes, just memory. I was told to forget, she said. Voice steady, not loud. I followed that order. I did not ask for a commendation. I did not ask for acknowledgement. I told myself silence was part of service. A pause. But silence is a weight, and I am tired of carrying it alone. She opened her hand, held up the faded patch. No backing, just threads, shadow shapes. A ghost sewn into fabric. This is what we wore, she said. No unit name. No command motto, just this, and each other. Someone in the third row exhaled, sharp and shaken. Black Dune, Crimson Ridge, Operation Ghostwalker. We weren't ghosts. We were real. We bled in places that didn't make maps. We dragged each other out of fire zones while satellite links failed. We carried more than gear, we carried people. A hush fell over the auditorium, thick with unsaid names. I'm not here to open wounds, she continued. I'm here because people like Vargas, like Reese, like Soren, people you've never heard of, deserve more than a blank line on a spreadsheet. She held up the flash drive. This has the logs, footage, names, locations. I've submitted it to General Ree. to DIA, to Senate oversight. But I'm showing it to you because it belongs to the people who served, who are still serving. Who might one day walk into a depot and be laughed at for wearing the truth? She paused. No one looked away. No one asked for my story. She looked at the young soldiers in the back. Boots still scuffed from last week's training. But I'm telling it anyway. And then she stepped down. She did not wait for applause. There wasn't any. But there also wasn't silence. There was stillness. The kind that only comes when something important has shifted. Quietly, permanently. That night, she walked the length of Fort Adwell under the dim orange buzz of perimeter lights. Her phone buzzed once. Message from General Rhee Congressional Liaison requesting closed briefing. Senate Veterans Subcommittee. Next week, I'll be there, so will your file. We're not ghosts anymore. She closed the message, put the phone away. Her breath fogged slightly in the cooling night. From behind a hangar, she heard cadence calls echoing through darkness. Young voices, loud and proud. She smiled, then turned and kept walking, not into the past. Not into history, but forward. Finally, forward.